Planet of the Ood might well be one of the most ambitious episodes of this era. Alongside an entire planet's worth of in-hospital frostiness, it spins a grand tale of corporate wrongdoing with plenty of political undercurrent, encompassing slave trade, concentration camps, and battery farming, right through to revolutionary uprising. And it even finds the time to be funny with it. Add to that the music is brilliant, the acting is different class, and the costume design of the Ood is just as, if not better, than the last time we saw them. Although as a story in its own right, Planet of the Ood can be a bit blunt at times, any episode about slavery has a tendency to get heavy-handed, and understandably so. Slavery is one of these topics that is very hard to handle in a manner that doesn't feel blunt or heavy-handed. Some acts are so abhorrent and really disconcerting that it's really hard to find nuance or subtlety in their brutality. First time Who writer Keith Temple's script tackles the subject with remarkable clarity, ploughing straight through the ground that needs to be covered with a ruthless efficiency. While the beauty of James Moran's Fires of Pompeii script last week was the way that it managed to skillfully avoid answering any of the unanswerable moral quandaries by throwing a plethora of curveballs, Temple's script is rather a tad stronger for engaging with the identified issues head on. All the necessary points are covered. Planet of the Ood deals with the ways that society covers up or justifies slavery through clever wordplay, self-delusion or indifferent complicity. We keep them in facilities of the highest standard, the PR executive insists, speaking with something approaching the white man's burden, perhaps better classified as the privileged burden. We keep the Ood healthy, safe and educated. We don't just breed the Ood, we make them better. Humanity, we're told, brings meaning and civilization to a race that are born to be subservient. The subservient argument articulated in The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit is revealed to be a self-serving myth, something humans say and repeat to justify their own actions. After all, this sort of abuse isn't something that can be laid at the feet of any individual or corporation. It's a problem that exists at a societal level, and a passive acceptance of the status quo that makes a person just as complicit as an active participant. If people back on Earth knew what was going on here, Donna begins, the executive cuts her off. Oh, don't be so stupid, of course they know. This catches Donna's attention. They know how you treat the Ood, she demands. Solana responds, they don't ask, same thing. The Doctor himself catches Donna out on this, pointing out that her moral outrage only bubbles to the surface when she's directly confronted by all of this. It's not so different from your time, the Doctor remarks at one point, after Donna expresses her horror. Oi, she protests, I haven't got slaves. The Doctor rather curtly responds, who do you think made your clothes? It's a very pointed and rather blunt criticism, but one that is arguably directed as much at the audience as at Donna. That said, given the Doctor's indifference towards the suffering of slaves in Rome and Pompeii, it does feel a bit like a cheap shot, as Donna argues. That said, Temple's script is at least self-aware enough that none of this feels way too earnest. Temple's script is quite effective here. The way that show leaves this observation about the ethnicities of Solana and Kes unstated by any of the characters helps. Indeed, the closest the show comes to overly acknowledging this is when Halpin gets a bit too snippy with Solana, curtly instructing her to do what she's told and urging her to hurry up, earning a rather subdued yes sir in response, as she's reminded of her place in Halpin's grand scheme of things. But in this context of big business baddie and dog's body workforce girl, this kind of dialogue feels realistic and natural. A word must also go to director Graham Harper, who has the distinction of being one of the only directors of the classic show, and one of the best directors of the revival. He's able to lend Planet of the Ood a genuinely blockbuster feel, zipping along through a series of well-staged set pieces at a frantic pace. There's absolutely no justification for the gigantic claw scene other than, it looks cool, I've always wanted to do this, Kes admits, and one imagines he's speaking for the entire production staff. But it looks cool enough that it works. While it isn't an essential element of the plot in the grand scheme of things, it's also a great demonstration of how Tennant's Doctor's arrogance can be turned against him. Harper also manages to take what amounts to a little more than a factory in the snow and to craft an entire world around it. This episode is hardly the most inventive of extraterrestrial environments, looking a bit downbeat and industrial site. However, Harper makes it feel distinct and alien enough that it really works. In its own hyper-stylised way, it's just as convincing as the fantastic studio sets and location shooting on the Fires of Pompeii, and that is impressive. That said, the ending does feel a little bit awkward and out of nowhere. This, of course, the decision to change Halpin into an Ood. It's hard to figure out why Temple was going for it here, beyond quite a wonderful visual transformation. Is it meant to be a punishment? It's quite disturbing visually, yes, but the whole point of Planet of the Ood is that the Ood are actually nice creatures, capable of thought and will, and compassion. After all, the Ood promised to take care of him. Is Halpin's transformation intended to teach him a lesson in a grass is always greener sort of way? Is the idea that the only way Halpin can understand prejudice is by actually becoming a member of that oppressed group? After all, wasn't the whole point of the rest of the show that the Doctor and Donna are capable of incredible empathy for the plight of the Ood? It's a pretty standard moral for stories like this, a mile in their shoes, for example, but it feels just a little trite and cliche, and exactly the wrong direction for this episode in my opinion. In my opinion, the transformation feels like an idea that the writers seized upon as looking cool rather than an organic development for the story. To be fair to it, this episode has Donna call the Doctor.
It's weird, being with you, I can't tell what's right and what's wrong anymore.
It's better that way.
There's a nice bit of irony here, as Davies has been building the idea that the 10th Doctor is undermined by his own hubris, so it's a nice little callback to that. In fact, this episode seems based around another previous failure of the 10th Doctor, another example of how he was too narrow-minded or too short-sighted to deal with anything beyond the crisis at hand. The Impossible Planet and the Satan series too was an overloaded script, and it felt like the Ood were never really developed as much as they should have been. Barring the lovely decision to make them individually among the casualties of the mission in the Satan pit, they felt more like the plot devices than a developed race of characters. Not that it really impacts on that two-parter, because it has many of its own merits, other than this. Planet of the Ood also allows the show to point to it as a moral failing on the part of the Doctor. Servants, Donna asks at one point after the Doctor has casually described the Ood as servants of humans in the 42nd century. Donna protests, they're slaves. The Doctor concedes, last time I met the Ood I never thought, I never asked. He half-heartedly offers a defence. I was busy, so focused on the grand scheme of things that he missed the subjugation of an entire species. As such, the casting of Donna feels appropriate at this point as in the Doctor's arc. Donna isn't afraid to stand up to the Doctor, and it really works here. Another great element of this episode is how the Doctor's burden is able to be shared, even for the briefest of moments. Donna hears the universe as the Doctor hears it, but only for a second. Take it away, she begs. I can't bear it. This is the weight that rests on the Doctor's shoulders, that most impossible burden. Donna can withstand it for a second, just like she can help him press the plunger in the fires of Pompeii for a second, but she can't hold that weight forever. There's only so much a person can carry, and only so long she can carry it for. Donna's story always feels like it was going to be a tragedy, doesn't it? The suggestion, perhaps, is that the Doctor might also have a limit, an upper threshold of tolerance for all their responsibility. Naturally, it's a lot harder than the threshold of humans around him, but it still must exist. I also really enjoy the final scene of this episode, and the way that it wraps the story up in its entirety, whilst also foreshadowing what is to come for our central characters. Reprising episode 2's Stuff of Legends motif, the Ood offers some final words of wisdom to the time.
Children will sing of the Dr. Donna, and our children's children, and the wind and the ice and the snow will carry your names forever.
What's more, with the closing revelation the Doctor's song must end soon, it really adds to and sets up what's to come brilliantly. Overall, Planet of the Ood is a pretty solid companion piece to the Fires of Pompeii, right down to the complementary red-blue hue given to the two episodes. It's occasionally a little too heavy-handed, but the episode compensates for this well. Keith Temple's script allows the characters moving quickly enough that the problems never really catch up with it, and director Graham Harper demonstrates once more why he's the longest-serving member of the Doctor Who production team. I give Planet of the Ood a 7.5 out of 10.